Yeah, getting back on some videos here. Sometimes you got cracked pieces of plastic, and these things are the vents for the upper air, top air. And I mean, pieces of these get broke off. The problem is people crank these too hard down, and they don't exactly fit the wood dash, and then it puts a lot of strain on them. And there are actually several pieces. There's a ring that goes around that has a piece that goes on it. But usually when they pop apart, if you get all the pieces, you can put them back together. Now I hope all of that got in the video. Now here's one of the fins out of there, and I see people make these out of popsicle sticks and all kinds of things. What I do, and this is true of any plastic part you need, this is pretty easy. You can do an Instamold. I get this at a local craft store, and it sets up like gelatin. It's almost like jelly, and it doesn't take long if you use hot water, which I've got some over here. And I usually use 2 parts of this, but they give you directions. If you want it to harden quicker, you use less or more. But I use basically a little dish, and what I'm going to do is spread that out a little bit. But I want enough. This isn't that thick, so I don't need a lot. But I'm going to go over here and get my hot water. And you can immerse these all the way. Let's see. I think that should be good. And I'm going to take something and mix that real good. I'm going to use a tad more hot water there. And you just kind of make a goop out of it. It's got a short working time. I mean, you're talking minutes. You want it a thick enough consistency that when you push that thing down in there, it's not going to smash. But I think we got that mixed pretty good. I'm going to flatten my mold out. Okay. And then I'm going to take this, and I want to be able to make these round afterwards, which we're going to do with a little roto zip tool. But see, I'm going to press that down there, and I'm going to displace enough that they go deep enough that they cover the top of those. And I'm going to press on the end a couple of times. Now they also say you're supposed to, drop it a couple of times to get the air bubbles out of it and to activate it. So anyway, there we go. I think I got everything there formed nicely. And we'll let that go for maybe 10 minutes, and then we'll mix up our fiberglass resin and pour in there. Oh, by the way, this is what we're trying to accomplish. Now the one side was flat, so I took a piece of sandpaper to it and made the curve to the one side that was flat. And that's what happens after you take a and finish one. So anyway, we'll give that a few minutes. Okay, I mixed my juice and being fiberglass resin, you can see I started pouring it in there, but I'm going to fill it up to about the top. I'm going to put a couple more drops in there. couple more drops. Right there. You don't want to get it to overflow too much. You just have to do too much sanding. So got it filled up where the round parts will be filled to the top, and then that's good. Okay, this thing, I've let it dry a couple of days. Instead of being rubbery, this cast is, you can see part of this came out with it, but that's basically the form. I'm going to have to clean up where these little pins are with the Dremel tool, and we'll be good. But I don't reuse the mold. I just make another one when I go. But these things, you got to let them set up a couple of days. Make them nice and hard. And I put a little extra drops of the hardener in them to make sure they harden up extra quick. But anyway, it's a big, thick chunk of fiberglass, so it takes a little while to dry. It's not a thin layer. Okay, I've been working at this a while, but you can see I got a nice angle on this side here. And now I'm going to cut this back side down. These back sides are flat, so I'm going to put more pressure in the front because I don't want to take a lot of material off the back. And you just work at it a little bit, and you'll see that cuts away nicely there. I'm making great progress. Whoops. Anyway, I'm not going to put you through the whole painful process, but, you know, if you just work at it for a while, it takes quite a bit of material off quickly. You can see I'm already making progress there. So, anyway, I'll show you how I also make the little points real sharp. You can see here in the vise I've got my cast piece, and what I do, and take a Dremel tool, speed it up a little bit, but I take around these pins and I just slowly work the fiberglass so that I a lot of times I work in to out, okay, but I work those all the way around to make those little stubby pins, and I make them a tad smaller than their original ones, but you can't hardly get them in. They got those original ones, they're just as snug as can be, but these don't flop around any. But anyway, I've got that pretty well molded, so we'll get to putting it back in, and I'll show you how I glue plastic back together. The paint I'm going to use is a flat black, and I've got this on the shelf, and surprisingly it's a real pretty close match, especially if you hit it with just a tad of real light sandpaper after you get done. So my end product there, I guess I'm going to go ahead and paint it. Okay, I'm continuing to glue pieces on this, but you'll notice I've got all these on there. They all move, and I don't know that you can even tell which one. Oh, this one that comes out of that slot there at the end. Yeah, that's got to be in there when we put this next piece on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this next piece there, mix my glue up, but I got all kinds of little pieces and little clips and things, and these I don't clamp them real tight, but I'm holding that together so those don't fall out. But anyway, I've glued a couple of pieces already. That thing was in about 10 pieces, and if you're careful and go slow, and I use this JB Clear Weld 5-minute epoxy, and that way I can touch it up with a little paint after I glue, sand it off, make it even, and you can't even hardly tell unless you look real close where you glued it. So here we go. Okay, I mixed the glue and put it on that piece. And that piece I'm not going to put a clamp on because it just set in there perfectly. And, you know, it is even at the top. It's even there. I think it pressed in real nicely. So I'm not going to clamp that or anything. This is 5-minute epoxy, but I let it dry about an hour. And I'm going to move this every once in a while in case there got to be any glue in there, but just gently, because that may push that back like that. So I'm going to wait till I turn that again, but I'm going to let that glue dry a little bit. Okay, I got the camera off the selfie stick. You'll see I put tape on this. I think you can see I put tape on it. But this whole cavity right inside here is kind of chipped out of there. So I made a little thing out of tape so my glue won't run all over the place when I put it in there. And I'm using, as I said, this 5 minutes. So I'm going to wait about a minute, minute and a half before I actually put it in there. In other words, I'm going to let it get a little, you know, jelly consistency before I put it in there, so it just won't all run out through that hole. But you can see I got most of the pieces on there, and you know, it looks good. Everything works, and I think from here I'm all downhill. It was nip and tuck there for a while getting all those pieces together, but it turned out nice. Okay, I've gotten the, you can see right here, I've put 3 coats on this, and the last one I dripped it in there. I make a bunch of them, and I drip it down in there, spread it around, but, you know, I've got it real smooth, so I want to avoid having to sand it a lot. I'll take a Dremel tool and clean that up, but you can see that 1/2 inch chunk that was missing. I now have a nice piece of plastic there where I don't think you'll be able to notice it once I sand and paint it a little bit.